War always has a cost, however far the war might be. It always finds a way to your home and to your family. Well, let's look at how the Russia-Ukraine war is playing out. Let's take a closer look. Infrastructure damage is fully tangible and can be seen and is pegged at 63 billion, as you can see in this particular slide. I've taken this information from Kyiv School of Business. They have a website in which they have shown this study, and they have created a very elaborate system to capture information. So I'll put more details of that in the description below. But suffice to say that the $63 billion is just the infrastructure cost. The more obscure component is the overall economic losses to Ukraine due to the war. So it consists of direct losses like infrastructure, which we already quantified at 63 billion, and indirect losses such as GDP decline, investment cessation, outflow of labor, additional defense and social support costs, lost business opportunity, lost education hours, etc. I don't think it includes impact of the people who have been lost, both civilians as well as soldiers, who, if they lived their normal span of life, would have created a lot of GDP for the country. Those things are not included, but the range of this estimate is around $600 billion so far, and that's a huge amount. And the question is, who is going to pay this? Who is going to pay for reconstruction? Ukraine believes Russia should pay, and they have created an elaborate system to capture on the almost real-time basis all the damages that are being done, and a tab is running. And it includes all the costs, and they have getting all the information from their own citizens. We'll put a link to the website below where that is where you can see the tool on the website. But coming back to this point, who is going to pay? And somehow or the other, indirectly, it's the salaried employee worldwide who is going to end up paying for this misadventure, because we are being taxed, and our tax money is the one that's going to go to solve all the world problems. And this creates domestic political issues, as well as weakens the society and creates economic problems. So that's the reason why we need to worry about it. And there are a very clear breakup of the costs, as you can see in this particular slide, again from Kyiv School of Economics, where they have given the cost of each of the element that has been destroyed, and how many of them have been destroyed, and that's a grand total of around 6 billion. So if you look at this particular graph here, it talks about all the damaged road, around 8,265 kilometers worth of damaged road. You are looking at damaged housing. We saw the infrastructure, 4,431 houses have been destroyed. 8 airports have been destroyed. And you have thermal and hydropower plants, 7 of them have been destroyed. Railway stations and rolling stock, healthcare institutions. The whole breakup is out here, and it shows that all this productivity which had gone to make up the economy of Ukraine has been dismantled, and this needs to be rebuilt, and there's going to be cost involved in it. And this running tab generated by Ukraine is to remind Russia that at the end of the hostilities, they are supposed to pay this money. Whether Russia is going to pay it or not is a different issue altogether. This slide here gives you a breakup of the costs that we spoke about. Russia is spending 900 million per day. It's not just Ukraine paying the price, but also Russia. They have lost more than 650 tanks so far, according to reports. And during war, the reports are always suspect, because each side will try to better the other. But 650 tanks is what I have gathered from all my research out here, and around 300 armored personnel carriers. And the report suggests that Russia has lost a third of its armored forces in this conflict so far. And they have an inflation of 12.5% raging in their economy. Now, if you look at Ukraine, Ukraine has also suffered losses of 2,345 civilians and 25,000 troops, and its inflation is raging at 10.7%. So not only are they having this war, but also inflation is there, and it's going to get worse every following month because the supply is going to be constrained. Domestic production has been halted, and imports are going to be difficult. So that 10.7% number is definitely going to increase. On the other side, for Russia, it's going to suffer a loss of revenue from its usual exports like oil and gas. Ukraine is the world's sixth largest exporter of wheat and exports around 20 million tons of wheat and accounts to around 10% of global market share in wheat exports. Whereas Russia is exporting even more than Ukraine, it exports around 30 metric tons of wheat and is a top producer along with India. Now, we have problem in the wheat sector right now because of the fact that both Russia and Ukraine are involved in conflict, and Ukrainian exports are going to be constrained because the eastern part of Ukraine where the wheat is grown is under attack, and also the ports are being attacked by Russia. So exporting or importing anything for Ukraine through the port system is going to be almost next to impossible because of the hostilities. And that's the reason why all of us are going to suffer a shortage of wheat. And wheat is a very, very basic product. The reason why India has stopped exports of wheat is because there have been some problem with the crops this year due to excessive heat, and the production has been suboptimal as far as India's wheat production is concerned. And in India, earlier, many years ago, the farmers were a marginalized lot because they were small farmers, and there were a lot of middlemen who used to buy grains on cheap and hoard it and then increase the price and then sell it to the general public. So in order to prevent all of this abuse of the farmer, they created a Food Corporation of India, which buys all the crops at really good rates from all the farmers across the country, puts it into a central granary, and then distributes it across the country to make sure that food inflation is under control and also that the farmer gets paid properly. Now, with the scenario where we have international conflict and the price of wheat has gone up so much, there are a few entrepreneurs in India who managed to corner some wheat from various farmers and then send it across abroad for export. So in April, India had exported a significant amount of wheat. And when the government found that out, the government decided that just buying from the farmers is not going to prevent exports. A direct export ban has to be put in place so that domestic consumption will be supported adequately and there won't be any food inflation to worry about, because India is battling inflation of 8% at this point of time, and it's very keen to bring it down. And also the Indian currency has weakened significantly against the dollar, which is making all kind of imports expensive, and that's the reason why the Indian government has done that. And as a result of this, what's going to happen is that wheat, which is a staple in most of the developing countries where the consumer price index is predominantly consisting of consumption items, with food being a major portion of it, it's a very, very sensitive issue. And when we come to the West, wheat gives you semolina, it gives you flour for making your cookies and bread and everything, and pasta. So wheat is very important for us as well. And as wheat supplies run short, and US crops are also not that great this year for wheat, there is going to be a shortage, and that shortage is going to mean food inflation for all of us, whether you're a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian. Wheat is going to impact you because we eat bread, we eat cookies, we eat cakes. So even if we stop eating cakes and cookies, we still have to eat the bread, which is the basic sustenance. And that's the reason why, that's how it's going to hurt us in terms of food inflation and shortage at the supermarket. The other cost to the rest of the world is going to be in terms of oil and gas shortage. We already spoke about the wheat shortage, which will be food insecurity and inflation. Now, Europe happens to be the destination for half of Russia's crude and petroleum product exports, and this represents 2.2 million barrels per day of crude oil and 1.2 million BPD of petroleum products. That's the quantum of dependence of Europe on Russia, and that's the quantum of dependence of Russia for its income on Europe. So when the oil embargo comes in and Europe becomes free of Russian gas and oil and gas, Russia is going to lose revenues for this extent, and Europe is going to be sourcing that from somewhere else, and therefore there's going to be a pressure on Russian economy internally and on the global economy externally because of the higher price of oil, because a particular source of supply has been blocked up. This graph provides a different way of looking at it. We are looking at it from the Russian perspective, Russian oil exports by destination. And you will see that EU accounts for 29% of the exports, and US accounts for 10%. And if you look at the orange one, which is China, that's around 22%. So we can assume that that 22% is not going to be impacted much by all this war activities going on and all the rhetoric, because China is supporting Russia to a good extent. But you can definitely count for the US and EU crude, as well as the 16%, which is EU product. All of those are going to go away from the Russian income basket, and Europe will have to source these from some other place, and so would US have to do the same for the 10% that it's taking from Russia. So this is one of the ways of looking at the chart. Before the war, Russian oil accounted for 1/3 of the supply of Germany, and now it is at 12%. While Germany vows to remove the last bit of dependence, this 12%, the problem for Europe is that the oil and gas is coming from Russia in a pipeline. Whereas if it has to get the same from other places, then it has to be converted into a LPG form, and then it has to be unloaded at the port, and you need special facilities to re-liquefy them and distribute them out. So all those infrastructure is not in place, and it has got to be put in place so that oil and gas from other places can be brought into Europe. And that's what they are working on, and they have to get their act together before winter. So if Europe was to import this from elsewhere, then there's this infrastructure cost for converting the LPG into gas and then distributing it. Not only does it cost money, but also it takes time. So there's going to be a bit of a lag out there. And that's the reason why the embargo, though it is being announced, is going to take a little while to actually implement. And hopefully before that, the war stops and things can get back to normal. If you look at this chart, it presents the data in a different way. OECD Europe, the crude oil and condensate imports from Russia. Now, if you look at the chart here, you've got Netherlands, Germany, Poland, and rest of European region. So Poland is a significant consumer, Germany is another one, and Netherlands. So in terms of Germany, it's already starting to make arrangements to replace the remaining 12%. Poland has declared that it's energy independent, and it's been working along with Bulgaria. Actually, both Poland and Bulgaria will have better time thanks to the amount to be the about to be completed interconnector Greece-Bulgaria, that is IGB pipeline that will supply gas from a different source. Poland will have a little more difficulty than Bulgaria because 18% of Poland's energy comes from natural gas and 30% from oil and 40% from coal. Coal is to be phased out because it is environmentally unfriendly. So adding more capacity in the coal side for energy is not going to be productive. So some replacement has to be found for the 40%, for the 30% oil and 18% gas that's being used by Poland from Russia. So that equation has to be worked out. The Baltic pipeline, which will deliver natural gas from Norway to Poland through Denmark, is not yet completed. After being hit by a series of delays, it's expected to deliver around 10 cubic meters of gas annually to Poland. But half of the country's total consumption will be met by this. And it's expected that somewhere around January of 2023, it will be ready. But next winter will be the true test, and Europe has to get the supply issue sorted out before then. So here's another representation of the dependence of OECD member countries on Russian oil imports. And you will see out here that Lithuania is the most dependent and Japan is the least dependent. And along the spectrum, you find Finland, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, Estonia, Germany, Greece, and Norway, as well as Latvia, Netherlands, and Belgium, and Turkey, and Czech Republic. So countries that I mentioned just now are all consuming about 20% of their oil, which is coming from Russia. So that's the kind of dependence we have for Europe. And it's going to be pretty difficult to wean Europe away from Russian oil and gas. The process is going to take time. It's going to cause a lot of inconvenience. And in the meantime, if you look at the other side of the question, which is who is going to pay for this? So these are the countries that have paid so far. And the bottom axis, it's the billions. So we have 7.5 billions paid off to Ukraine so far by other countries. The topmost on the list is United States, followed by Poland, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, Estonia, Canada, Japan, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. So that's a whole lot of money that has gone in there. Now, the taxpayers in all these countries will have to bear the burden. I'm not saying that countries should not help Ukraine, but I'm trying to point out what a senseless exercise a war can be. It's loss for the aggressor, it's loss for the defendant, and at the same time, it's a big loss for all the bystanders because all the citizens everywhere are going to pay extra taxes directly or indirectly. If the government does not increase tax, we are still going to pay it through higher inflation and higher interest rates. So there is never a free lunch anywhere. And this chart kind of shows where the money has come from mostly. And one of the problems when countries start supporting external incidences and other countries is that the local population starts developing resentment. There are a lot of unmet demand within each of the countries. There is homelessness and there is shortage of something or the other. And when the government shells out this much of money for a crisis which is outside the borders, the citizens definitely feel aggrieved. So a portion of the citizens who are not that far-sighted are going to be aggrieved, and that's going to create a lot of rupture in most of the countries when it comes to the elections. And the elected government may be a result of conflict and may not entirely be a rational government. So you have a period of darkness following these kind of incidences. So that's the other hidden cost behind this conflict, in my opinion. And in closing thoughts, I would say that all civilians and soldiers lost on both sides could have lived a good life, given companionship, love, and affection to their family, been a support to their family, and been a companion to their family, and also done a lot of GDP in the process and made both the countries that much better, improved the quality of living for both those countries that much better. That's a clear loss, which can be tangible in terms of converting it into a dollar rate and extrapolating, etc. But the intangible part of it is a bigger loss for the families as well as the society in general. All this destruction is total waste. Everything that was created has been damaged and decimated. It's absolute waste. And in this particular conflict, US, UK, EU, everybody has pumped in money, as I showed you in the previous graph. Total of 900 million has gone to Ukraine. And that money has got to come from somewhere else. And after the war is over, I don't think Russia is going to have enough stamina or capability to pay the damages to Ukraine. So there could be defaults in a lot of debts also in this process. So everyone everywhere is going to pay for this. And if we keep these aspects at the back of our mind when we look at our VIX and Nasdaq and everything tomorrow, and we ask the question, when is the market going to turn around? We should remember that all the things that we discussed just now are just one part of the problem with the global economy, and which is causing all the supply chain and other issues. There are other problems everywhere elsewhere, like the problem in China with the housing sector, and the problem in China with the zero COVID policy, the hyperinflation in Turkey, and the Iranian crisis where we need to have the agreement put in place. So there's a whole slew of those things. And indirectly, that affects the inflation. And then when inflation comes in, the Fed comes out to smell the inflation and try to douse it out by increasing interest rates. So this is a vicious cycle that we have got into, and the war is only aggravating it. Without the war, it would have been a tough battle to have a soft landing. And with the war, which has unpredictable consequences on a daily basis, we are in a situation where a soft landing for the Federal Reserve seems to be increasingly difficult to achieve. And then the alternative is going to be either recession or stagflation. And stagflation is a very good possibility if oil embargoes get into place. and people have to pay a lot of money for oil. That's going to be something that cannot be reciprocated by a household budget, which is constrained by high interest rates and a higher level of unemployment. And that will kind of take us into stagflation. However, if the supplies are restored and the war is finally comes to a end, then we have a situation where we could probably be in a mini recession with 2 to 3 quarters of negative GDP growth and then come back into normal. So which way we'll go depends on how soon this war gets over and how soon our supply chains can start moving properly, and oil price would no longer be a component of inflation. Right now, it forms the biggest portion of our inflation. It's the root cause of the inflation that we are seeing, apart from supply chain constraints. So with that, I'd like to bring this session to an end. I thought that I'll just elaborate on this a little bit as food for thought for you when you're looking at the VIX the next time, or when you're looking at Nasdaq, because these costs are still continuing to mount. This is a snapshot. It's only increasing every day. And I don't know by how many billions it is increasing every day. And all that is going to be borne by the global citizenry in terms of either taxes or in terms of inflation. Please let me know if you like this video. Please put a like down there. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Join our community for everything CRISPR and the stock market. Bye for now.